Hello. Welcome to the Black Etc. podcast, a podcast about how ideas and culture spread amongst Black Americans, especially outside mass media. I'm your host, Ian Youssef. Today's guest is the legendary Charla L. Draper. She's a writer, food expert, consultant, publicist, food stylist, and she's really a pioneer and a giant in Black and soul food media. She's a former food editor of Southern Living magazine and Ebony magazine. And in fact, at Ebony, she helped to stand up the famous Ebony Test Kitchen, which, as you may know, was acquired by the National Museum of African American History and Culture. Ms. Draper is also the founder of National Soul Food Month, which occurs every June. This year is special in that it will be the 25th annual National Soul Food Month. In our discussion, we spoke about why she started National Soul Food Month and what everyone should expect for the 25th annual celebration. We spoke about her history at Ebony, what the Black and soul food media space was like back then, and how it's changed in the subsequent decades. And we also talked about trends in soul food itself that she's seen over time. It was truly an honor to speak with Ms. Draper, and I hope you enjoy the conversation. Today, my guest is a food expert, writer, publicist, consultant, and food stylist. She's a former food editor at the magazines Ebony and Southern Living, a longtime Chicago resident and founder of National Soul Food Month. I'm honored to welcome Charla Draper with me today. Thanks for joining me.
Well, hi, Ian. Thank you so much for thinking of me and inviting me to participate.
Oh, of course, of course. Who were some of the prominent figures in Black food, chefs, scholars, etc., who were at the forefront of writing about soul food when you were first getting started?
Well, when I was first getting started, I guess, and these were some of the people I did not know about. Like, for example, I did not know about Lena Richard, who had her own food show in New Orleans early on. And other people that influenced me when I was starting in the career would have been Frida DeKnight, who was the first food editor for Ebony magazine, who really established their food section, and also Natl Nash, who was the food editor for Essence magazine. Other folks that influenced me include Libby Clark, who was a journalist for the Amalgamated Newspaper Syndicate based out of the Los Angeles area. And she wrote a column for about 50 years. Her column was also included in the Chicago Defender. And I guess another journalist that would have influenced me would have been Teresa Fambro Hooks, who was based here in Chicago and wrote a column called TC's Town for the Chicago Defender. So those are some of the people that influenced me as I was getting started. Oh, and I can't leave out Doris Saunders. Doris was a multi-talented woman who was the founder of the Ebony Research Library, but I knew her personally before I joined the staff at Ebony.
What would you say was the perception of soul food amongst Black people when you were starting out? And were there regional and or class differences?
Well, soul food actually started out strictly as sustenance, something to eat. But over the years, it has evolved, the bar has been raised, and it has moved from just being on the kitchen table or the stove to appearing in many restaurants, on grocery shelves, and just really has expanded its influence over the past, I'd say, 50 to 75 years.
Mm-hmm. So what about, did you notice any class differences, or was it perceived differently in Chicago or in the South or out West or anything like that as far as you can tell?
Well, one thing that I do know is that soul food is based on, it started out as subsistence, being based around what was available locally. For example, folks in the Midwest Chicago area tended to make or serve a mixture of greens. I would say mustard and turnip greens originally.
Mm-hmm.
If you move to the East Coast, people were more familiar with kale. I've heard some stories where food authorities needed a specific green for maybe what they were going to demonstrate. And when they got into a different region, they couldn't find it. Now, kale has blown up from being, just something growing in the garden to being considered a power food. And now you can find it in grocery stores or farmers markets nationwide rather than being limited to one specific area of the country.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get into looking at different regions, well, each region, I would say, would add its own specific ingredient. For example, again, on the East Coast, people may add Old Bay seasoning as a flavoring agent to the greens that they're cooking versus something that would be a more basic flavoring, maybe salt pork, which you don't see that much of, or ham hocks versus an add to seasoning like Old Bay.
So I want to talk a little bit about your stint at Ebony. How would you describe the work that the Ebony Test Kitchen did while you were there? And can you talk about your role as food editor?
Well, when I went to Ebony, they did not have a food editor. The food section was freelanced out. And however it was being produced, it was not being really executed well so that it resonated with the magazine readers. Now, one of the things that I did when I went to Ebony was to really get the test kitchen up and running. I came to Ebony from the craft kitchens where I learned a significant amount about food product marketing. So when I get over to Ebony, they have a beautiful kitchen,
Mm-hmm.
beautifully decorated, and really a showpiece kitchen, but it wasn't functional. The kitchen was not set up to work, actually. There were no utensils, no plates, no pots and pans, nothing. So one of my first things to do was to get the test kitchen up and running to be a functional test kitchen. One of the key objectives of my being on the Ebony staff was to help motivate additional advertiser interests. People think magazines are paid for by the subscriptions, and it's really the advertising that helps the magazine stay afloat.
Mm-hmm.
After I had been there about a year, we looked at the advertising, and food advertising had increased 50% within 1 year of me coming on board, which was really a significant increase.
Yeah.
When Ebony first started, well, I won't say when it first started, but when Frida DeKnight was the food editor, she built a relationship with advertisers and did a lot of work with the Carnation Milk Company, even developing a recipe pamphlet using their product, which really helped elevate the image of Carnation in the eyes of the Black consumer.
Mm-hmm.
So those are some of the types of things I did to help generate interest from our readers and also generate interest in advertising in the magazine. I added a column called Reader Favorite Recipe, which solicited recipes for a specific food. I would give each month, I would ask the readers to send in their favorite recipe for, let's say, barbecue ribs or sweet potato pie. And the readers really enjoyed it. If your recipe was selected, you were acknowledged in the food section by name and local residency. And you also received a $50 honorarium, which was very generous.
Yeah.
We got hundreds of recipes. And what I did was I would review what came in and narrow the pool down to maybe 25 recipes that looked good and I could see they would work. And I would test them and narrow it down maybe to 10 to 15 choices. I'd prepare the recipes and then solicit votes from the magazine employees. I didn't select the winners. The winners were really selected by employees at Ebony magazine. And one of the most memorable recipes that I remember was a sweet potato pie. I can't remember where the recipe originated. I have to go back and look in my archives to see which town produced this sweet potato pie. It was very good.
I've heard about that legendary recipe in doing my research. So I'm glad you mentioned the column because I wanted to ask, why was it so important for you to approach recipe development in that way, community-oriented, populist, as opposed to the top-down approach typical of food writing?
Well, food is culture. And some of the favorite recipes, they're things that are prepared by home cooks nationwide. However, if you can get let's say the basis of the recipe from the home cooks, but it's important to certainly, I guess, refine it or maybe add measurements so that the recipe can be repeated successfully every time and be consistent. I mean, so many of us are what I call vibration cooks, where, well, we'll add a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Well, you mix it until it feels right or it looks right.
Yeah.
Well, that can vary so much depending on who is actually preparing the recipe.
Mm-hmm.
So by getting that basic recipe at a grassroots level and then refining it or getting some measurements, that will help us continue our food ways and be successful in how we continue them. Like so many people, and there's so many how to make videos that appear on social media. And so many of the folks who are doing that, they often are not using the appropriate measuring utensils. Folks don't understand if you're doing something where you're using a liquid, you need to use a liquid measure versus using the same measure you would use if you're measuring flour or sugar. There is a difference.
Right. How did you come to create National Soul Food Month?
Well, in 2001, I was working on a project with the culinary historians here in Chicago, and I'm a member of that group, and they were doing a conference called Grits and Greens. And the more I delved into it, the more I said, soul food really needs to have its own place in history. And based on the work I did on that conference, my learnings evolved into creating National Soul Food Month, which will recognize its 25th year anniversary in June of this year.
Yeah, that's right. What types of research did you do when you were figuring out how to make it happen?
Well, I relied on some of what I had learned about food product marketing when I worked for Kraft and other food companies. In addition to looking at some of the things that I had seen in terms of product promotion or food promotion, I applied those to National Soul Food Month. And one of the first things I did was got National Soul Food Month listed in Chase's calendar of events, which is the reference book that comes out every year. And it's pretty much the definitive guide of what's being celebrated every year.
Mm-hmm.
And from getting it into Chase's calendar, then I shared that information with the media. I'm a member of the National Association of Black Journalists. I've been a member nationally, and I currently am a member of the Chicago chapter. So again, I shared the information with journalists, whether they were general interest journalists or strictly food related or nutrition related journalists. And I also shared the information with some of my food clients for my business, It's Food Biz. So a lot of the work that I did in terms of sharing about National Soul Food Month was word of mouth. And then, of course, I've used social media to spread the word and let people know about it and what we're going to do to celebrate it.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of feedback are you getting from folks?
Well, I'm getting very good feedback, and certainly our sponsors have been pleased with it. ConAgra Brands has been a sponsor since the 20th year recognition. Also, Butterball Turkey is a sponsor that has returned. So we're hoping they will return for the 26th recognition. Also, a lot of people haven't heard of it. For example, I was in New York at one of the soul food restaurants, and they were surprised to hear about it and very interested, and immediately gave me their personal contact information so I could share information with them this year.
Mm-hmm. Do you have anything special planned for the 25th anniversary?
Well, I'm not quite ready to share what we have planned, but
Okay.
I have my fingers crossed and positive thoughts that people will be excited when it's announced. What we did last year, we did a screening of the Emmy Award-winning documentary film, Finding Edna Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Edna Lewis is really a food icon known as the mother of soul food. And I really regret that I didn't have an opportunity to meet Edna when I was just getting started in my career.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk some about what you've seen in terms of trends in soul food dishes. So I'm particularly interested in, are there dishes that were popular back in the day that you no longer see? And what are some of the newest and latest dishes that you've seen become adopted?
Well, I think one of the dishes that was popular back in the day would be chitlins.
Yeah.
And you just don't see them the way you did, I'd say, 30 or 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Now, you will see, I've seen a lot of videos about them during the holiday season,
Mm-hmm.
but people just are not making them the way they used to. And a lot of people don't realize that they're a delicacy in France.
They're a delicacy all over. Yeah. Every culture eats all parts of the animal. So like South America, all parts of Europe, Spain, Italy, France, whatever, Eastern Europe, Southeast Asia, everybody basically eats the stomach, the intestines, because they don't waste food.
Hmm. Very true. That's very true. And so many people in the American culture don't appreciate that.
Right.
You know, when they finish with the rotisserie chicken, they've sliced off all the meat that they can. Most people just toss the carcass in the garbage.
Mm-hmm.
They don't think about, well, I could make a chicken broth
Right.
from this carcass and use that to flavor something I'm cooking next week or next month.
That's right. I am a little sad about the kind of loss of chitlins. I mean, my dad was a chitlin maker,
Uh-huh.
and that tradition died with our generation, his kids. You know, like none of us make them.
Well, why not?
Well, my sister is a pescatarian, so she wouldn't eat it anyway.
Exactly.
It's very labor intensive. I remember him making them. It took a really long time. It's a whole process. And if you live in a small space, as I do,
Mhm.
it's a problem. You know, the remnants afterward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The aroma.
Yeah, yeah. What about new dishes? Have you seen any dishes pop up as like, oh, this is basically a new dish that folks have adopted into the canon?
Well, I don't know whether it's a new dish or not, but it's a traditional African dish. I would say jollof rice is becoming more popular.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's becoming more popular as people travel more and experience connections with people who are, I won't say newly arrived. Most of us are descendants from Africa, but some of us, our families have been in this country so long, we have lost the connections to some of those traditional foods. So I would say jollof rice is one of the items that I see appearing more often on plates or in restaurants. And also there are some staple food products, authentic African food products that are appearing on grocery store shelves.
Mm-hmm. In your view, how has the national Black food scene and Chicago scene in particular, since that's where you're based, changed over time?
Well, back in the day, there were several local area restaurants that were highly regarded, and most of those no longer exist. However, with the advent of social media, we see the appearance of new food influencers, people such as the Black Foodies
Mm-hmm.
and Black People Eats, who actually do videos that they post telling the story of their visits to some of the restaurants and things that are becoming more popular. Also, you see people who are restaurant owners who are putting their own face into their videos, letting you know when they're open or when the opening is coming up. One thing I would say people should be taken with a grain of salt. Don't rely strictly on the video information that you see about the restaurant or the food. Try it yourself so that you know what you actually think. Some, like anything else, all that glitters isn't gold. And
Mm-hmm.
some of the information that you see, it can be inaccurate.
Mm.
Certainly, I would say you can always have a bad day at the restaurant for whatever reason. But one of the most important things to keep in mind is customer service. People always remember how you made them feel when you respond to maybe their question or their inquiry, or if they have an issue.
Yep, that's right. What projects are you currently working on that you can tell us about?
Well, National Soul Food Month is the number one project that I'm working on. And I'm also working on a proposal for a cookbook. And my goal is to get the proposal out to some folks in the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
So hopefully when we chat again, I'll be able to share the name of the cookbook.
Okay. So now we get to the portion of questions that I ask every guest. The first one is, what songs got people on the dance floor back when you were going out dancing at your peak?
Well, certainly I would have to give credit to the Motown sound and anything that Michael Jackson produced.
Right.
That would be my number one answer on that.
What particular songs were your favorites?
Well, there was always those songs off of Thriller.
Mm-hmm.
And then other Motown songs would be My Girl by The Temptations.
Yep.
And I can't leave out I Heard It Through the Grapevine.
Yeah.
Because we still hear it through the grapevine.
What is a Black cultural work that you think is a classic but is underappreciated?
Do you mean food related or food, not food, or?
Any genre. It could be a book, movie, play, album, whatever.
Well, I can't say that it's underappreciated, but I would suggest everyone read The Warmth of Other Suns.
Isabel Wilkerson.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would suggest everyone try to read The Warmth of Other Suns, because it really is a good description that really will bring the reader into the African American experience.
Mm-hmm. And then finally, what particular dish did your family make that you looked forward to the most?
I would say gumbo. My dad's family was from Shreveport, Louisiana. And that was a family treat when we would have gumbo. And I should make it more often.
Me too.
I have a sister that always wants to know, well, when am I going to make it? But my sister is the family macaroni and cheese cook and is not always, what shall I say, cooking things that are labor intensive, like gumbo.
Well, Miss Draper, thank you so much for joining me. Where can people find you?
You can find information about National Soul Food Month online. We have a website, nationalsoulfoodmonth.com, and it will be updated consistently over the next few weeks with information about what we're doing. And I also have a website for my food product promotion business. It's foodbiz.com. I'm on Instagram as Charla L Draper, also on Facebook and Threads.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I thought this was a great conversation, and I hope to do it again soon.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me.
All right, take care. I again would like to thank Ms. Charla L. Draper for taking the time out to speak with me. You can find her on Instagram. Her handle is at Charla L. Draper. Her food marketing site is itsfoodbiz.com. And the National Soul Food Month site is nationalsoulfoodmonth.com. There's one major lesson I took away from this discussion. You may recall Miss Draper talking about the column that she created called Your Favorite Recipe. That was the one where she solicited recipes from Black folks around the country. They would send them in to Ebony. They would test the recipes in the Ebony Test Kitchen, and then they would choose the best ones, publish them in the magazine, and give the folks responsible for the recipes a small honorarium. So that practice, the community-based grassroots approach to creating culture and recipes, is exactly what I'm trying to do with Soul Food, etc. Expand the Canon. That is actually the reason I started this podcast, as you recall, to learn from efforts to spread Black culture in grassroots ways. In this particular case, I am actually trying to expand the canon of soul food recipes. So my lesson, my takeaway is, Miss Draper did what I was trying to do several decades ago. The lesson is that our elders are a font of wisdom. We need to learn from them. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Talk to our people who've been there before, so we're not literally losing recipes. Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe, like, rate, and review the podcast on whatever platform you use to listen. Visit the website, blacketcpod.com. Until next time.